Marketing is a podcast for business owners and leaders, produced by my dad, Steve Davis, and his colleague at Talked About Marketing, David Olney, in which they explore marketing through the lens of their own 4 Ps: person, principles, problems, and perspicacity. Yes, you heard that correctly. Apart from their love of words, they really love helping people. So they hope this podcast will become a trusted companion on your journey in business.
David, have you given any thought, or could you now, to what you'd like me to say about you at your funeral?
That's actually far more complicated than people probably think it is to work out what you want other people to say.
Or let me rephrase it. What do you think I would say?
I think you would say that I was a supportive and caring person who, tried to make sure that other people achieved what they wanted to achieve, and that I've got a short temper and get stroppy with idiots.
Would I be allowed to say that at the funeral?
It'd be fine. It's true. Most people know it.
All right. How's next Thursday looking for you?
By the sound of it, pretty grim.
Our 4 Ps. Number 1, person. The aim of life is self-development, to realise one's nature perfectly. That is what each of us is here for. Oscar Wilde.
In the person segment today, I just wanted to do something a little bit different, because I was quite taken by an obituary written about US President Richard Nixon by a journalist, Hunter S. Thompson. Now, as we know, I think it's fair to say, David, this is your wheelhouse. You lectured on geopolitics for a big part of your career. When I say Richard Nixon to you, especially in the context of things we learn about ourselves as people, what springs to mind?
An absolute fixation with, I deserve this much power, and because I deserve it, it doesn't matter if I use it inappropriately. Like the arrogance and the self-servingness of Nixon is kind of breathtaking.
Wow. Now, coupled with that, I'm reminded of, I think it was episode 150 of the Adelaide show. I was having a major birthday milestone, and I got 5 friends to record eulogies for me, and we did a whole episode about how to write eulogies, and then I got to listen to them in company for the first time with others, and it was quite amazing. And it made me think that it's a waste for a eulogy to happen and be read out once you're dead, because it's quite touching and profound to hear what people actually think about you. And we don't talk enough about that while we're alive, and I think that's a real issue. That's a topic for a different day. But it does, back then and even now, it makes me wonder, and I think Stephen Covey in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People has an exercise in pondering, what do you think, what would you like spoken about you at your funeral? Because it's a way of giving focus to your base motivations and how you're coming across in life. You agree?
Yeah. To go back to a couple of episodes ago, you want the values that shaped you, that you put out in the world, to have resonated with people, and that they should be able to say, oh yeah, David was all about these things. If you've got a set of values that matter to you and you live them, you hope that that's what people notice.
There was a school principal, a deputy principal from Lutheran school up in Darwin in Palmerston, that I interviewed on another podcast I do called Around the School Table. And he works in the middle school, and he said he doesn't ask kids, what do you want to be? He asks them, what do you want to be like? And I think that's a similar sort of thing. It's trying to think about the outworking of your inner values.
Exactly. Like I would probably rephrase it as, how do you want to be? Because I think kids might find that an easier sentence to grasp. How do you want to be remembered? How do you want to behave? But yeah, that whole thing of, no, outcomes, you can't necessarily affect them, but you can certainly affect how you behave and how you put yourself in the world and how you do things, and that's going to have a big impact.
And if you're thinking, okay, that's fun, fascinating, but you might even think this afternoon or this morning, whenever you're listening to this evening, what would people say about me? Think of a specific person. What might they be saying about me in my eulogy if I were not here today? I guess if you want motivation to think about how you're living your life because you want those words to actually be quite constructive and beautiful words, you could do no worse than listening to what Hunter S. Thompson wrote about Richard Nixon and aim for something just a little more north than this.
There are bad reviews, and then there is the obituary that the gonzo journalist Hunter S. Thompson gave President Richard Nixon. If the right people had been in charge of Nixon's funeral, Thompson wrote, his casket would have been launched into one of those open sewage canals that empty into the ocean just south of Los Angeles. He was a swine of a man and a jabbering dupe of a president. Nixon was so crooked that he needed servants to help him screw his pants on every morning. Even his funeral was illegal. He was queer in the deepest way. His body should have been burned in a trash bin.
That is something I really don't want read out. My body should have been burned in a trash bin, unless the family doesn't want to spend money on the cremation.
Look, let's aim for a recyclable cardboard box. At least that's a good thing to burn if we're going to have a funeral pyre.
Do you think that's a good thing just to meditate on, to go, right, I think it's time for me to reset my compass?
I think the really sad thing is that it's said about Nixon after he died, and yet people were saying terrible things about him while he was alive. I think the terrible thing is that anyone who lives a life where that seems like a fair summation. That's just really sad.
It is, isn't it? So there we go for the person segment. Sorry if I brought you down, but let's all just ponder our mortality. And if we want the legacy of our memory to be a positive one that might give some inspiration to others or nourish them, then I guess we have a little bit of chance and time to take stock of how we're interacting in everyday life, whether it's with the people around us in our workplace, our customers or family, friends, etc. I think we all get caught up in busyness. I don't think it hurts just to reflect at that deeper, more mortal level.
You get to choose how you want to be.
Our 4 Ps. Number 2, principles. You can never be overdressed or overeducated. Oscar Wilde.
In the principles segment, this episode, we're actually talking about some very specific principles. And these were principles that came up in a previous conversation that David and I were having. And you're going to talk about them more eloquently, but it's the principle of, in fact, you can give us the story to give it context, but you have this thing that you draw upon, and it wasn't your original idea, but you'll give us some details on that when you're talking to people about ideas, especially contentious issues and getting caught up in the emotions high, you break things down and say, look, tell me what you know about a topic, tell me what you don't know about the topic, and tell me what you think, and do not get them muddled up. There's my generic introduction for you, David, to pick up the reins and draw some sense into this in a way that we can find some principles that might help us with our work in our small to medium enterprise, our associations, our organisations.
It's a really good approach to calming down, slowing down, separating emotion from knowledge, acknowledging what we don't know. I think the first time I ever heard it was at a counter-terrorism conference in 2006, and I was sitting with a reasonably senior Australian intelligence officer, and he said, well, the thing I don't like about conferences is you academics don't understand the rules of effective communication. Tell me what you know, tell me what you don't know, and then tell me what you think, and keep the 3 things separate. He said, you academics have a tendency to tell me what you think and tell me what you know and hide what you don't know. but I can't tell which is what you think and which is what you know. I thought, oh, that's very interesting.
That is very profound for someone to come out with. Obviously, it wasn't his original idea.
No, it was very much the idea of the intelligence officers on one side of the room versus the academics on the other. And I take great pride in that conference, that when it came time for the conference dinner, I walked in. At that point, Karen and I were only friends. We weren't a couple yet. And I thought we would go and sit on the academic table. And we walked in for the conference dinner only to hear that intelligence officer going, "Oh, David, come and sit over here with us." I'm like, "Oh, okay, thanks. Is there room for Karen too?" And in typical senior officer format, he just went, "Everyone move down one seat." But it's like, oh, I'm now the only academic sitting at the grown-ups table. This is interesting.
So why and how does this work and is important?
Why and how in their world it's so important is they're always working with incomplete information. And I think that's very much the case too with small and medium enterprise. You know, like the intelligence world, you only have some information and you have to make decisions with less information than you would ideally like to have. But if you can define what you know and what you don't know, you can manage risk better. Because if you know you don't know it, that means you've at least thought about it. You're aware it would be nice to have, but you can make a judgment on the basis of what you've got and what you haven't got. And the fact that intelligence people always try and keep what they know and what they don't know separate from, now what do I think about all that information? So they always draw a distinction between here is a piece of information and here is what I think it means. Because information can always be interpreted differently by people who have different information, who have different training, who have a different perspective, who have a different goal in mind. And that it's really important, particularly in any discussion about taking risk, to draw a distinction between, well, what bits of information do we actually have? Do we have enough information to make a decision? Or are we actually so scant on information that if we do what we think we should do, we're really just going with blind luck?
Personally, I don't use terms like blind luck, David.
Yeah, but that's because you hang out with me and you're very careful about saying blind, and I tell you not to worry because it's such a useful word.
This is not the sort of thing you would bring in a conversation if you're in a cafe and you have to make a coffee or a thick shake. You don't have to start questioning those things. That's just a routine thing.
But if you're about to hire a new chef for your cafe, knowing that you've got a distinctive menu and people really like the dishes the way they're cooked, and you know that your chef wants to do whatever they're going to do, and you've got to get a new person, do you keep the menu you've got that they might not be able to copy? Do you introduce new dishes straight away? Do you try and get a new chef fast enough to overlap with the new chef so they can work together for a couple of weeks and the new person can learn? Is your current chef willing to help the new person learn to cook those dishes the same way? These are all things that you either know or don't know and have opinions on. But the more you keep all those things separate, the better you will manage the risk of, when you're hiring someone, are you going to try and get them to learn the existing menu? Can they work with your current chef for a while? Do you need a new menu? Like, the more you can break up what you know, what you don't know, and what you think, the better you will manage the risk of the change that is obviously coming down the pipeline towards your little restaurant.
And that's a very pragmatically focused example, but even in a more general strategic discussion, my intuition is that arm's length discipline of being able to say, look, we don't have enough much information, but this is what I think, naming it that way, as opposed to pitching your flag into it and saying this is truth, itself is a step forward in enabling a conversation to happen. Because the goal here is to diffuse the emotion that comes with ownership of positions, isn't it? To be more cool-headed in our discussion and be upfront. And if we've only got opinions, well, so be it, but at least we can name.
Name it. So we're essentially stepping away from emotion being at the center of the decision-making, and hopefully also stepping away from assumptions that aren't grounded on what we know.
But here's the rub. despite everything we say about, oh no, we make logical decisions, we know humans make emotional. So this to me, that we have a conundrum, because this is a framework that's trying to keep it cool and not be dominated and flooded by emotion. But are we kidding ourselves? Is it still going to be driven emotionally, or is there some trick that's going on with this methodology that gives us the best of both worlds?
My observation using it with people is it slows them down when they're categorizing. And by slowing them down and having to logically sort things, any strong emotion that was creeping into the discussion tends to dissipate. And their ability to take a little bit more time and reflect on where things fit and what other information they would really like to see if they can get before they make a decision, or do they want to reflect more on what they think the information means? It tends to just slow the pace and increase the reflection, and really just doing that is a win. So many people get caught in the emotional cycle of, I have to make a decision, and then they just go through an emotional whirlwind, finally make a decision more because of exhaustion than effective process. And this is effective process rather than emotional swirl. It's not a bad alternative.
And of the three, I mean, tell me what you know about a topic, tell me what you think, keep them separate so we're clear that this is my thinking, this is what we know are
and what we don't
facts.
know. Yeah.
But the don't know one is fascinating,
yeah,
because I think, first of all, in some situations it takes courage to admit you don't know something, but it's better in the long run. If we discover there's a deficit in our knowledge, then we can pause and get that filled without having to back ourselves up. I was listening to Sam Harris on the Making Sense podcast just recently, and he just referenced when Donald Trump said to Zelensky that, Ukraine, you started the war. And in Sam Harris's reading of the situation, he thinks that was just an accidental thing that Donald Trump said. It wasn't a thought that he'd had before. But once he'd said it, he then had to, but again, Robert Cialdini, and you have to have that continuity of your position. And so him and all his aides had to contort themselves to try and make this mistake reality, whereas had we said, look, I actually don't know, it clears the board. Is that fair?
I would like to agree with Sam Harris in that situation, but I actually believe that Trump is so emotionally dependent on Putin for approval that he is being guided by emotion rather than by any logical system.
So he's not going to make too much use of this principle.
No, never.
So let's put him to one side at the moment. For us, in our business and our organisations, in life, it's a nice little rubric.
Yeah, a heuristic.
A heuristic. Yeah. Tell me what you know. Let's talk about what we know. Let's talk about what we don't know. And let's talk about what we think about something. And with that sort of conversation, with things categorised thus, we might get to the positions more slowly, but better.
Exactly. And just keep them separate so that you can agree that the facts we have and the facts we don't have are, at least we've got some common ground, because people always do better in conversation when they can agree on the common ground.
Was that a good discussion? I mean, I don't know.
Seemed okay.
Well, that's what you think.
Well, can't even know it.
Our 4 Ps. Number 3, problems. I asked the question for the best reason possible. Simple curiosity. Oscar Wilde.
At the beginning of season 7, we had a special episode in which David and I went deep, reflecting on AI, warts and all. And one of the things that I touched on was the hype in the realm of the AI world. So much overpromising and not delivering. And I just wanted to, in the problem segment, embolden you, dear listener, to do what I've done, and basically, a bit like in Homer's Odyssey, Ulysses. I've heard so many different pronunciations of his name. He wanted to hear the sirens, and anyone who heard the sirens on on the shore. Their boat would go over, they get smashed on the rocks and eaten up and all that sort of stuff. So he had his crew fill his ears with wax and tie him to the mast of his boat. No. He left his ears open. He got his crew
to put wax in their ears.
So they couldn't hear the sirens. They were immune.
And he was tied to the mast, but could hear.
He could hear the exquisite beauty, but not get drawn into it. That is what's happening with AI. I've seen so many ads since I came back from the Variety Bash of, hey, do nothing. Just write a couple of words and a whole video series will be made. Do nothing. A couple of words. We'll write all your email things with AI and it's going to be magic. It is overpromising because I tell you, the majority, if not all of these tools, come out with plastic rubbish. It requires a lot more elbow grease to get them right than you think. And it's quite a horrible, icky part of this industry. One tool that I was using for a while was Opus Clip. Its promise is that you upload a video you've made. So I'd upload the video version of this podcast, which, by the way, it's not live video. We just have the still image and we have the sound just so it's on YouTube for people to listen to. And we feed it into Opus Clip, and it's meant to use AI to find the juicy little bits and make short clips. That's its job. It kind of worked okay. And then increasingly I found it was just missing the mark. If I was going to do something with them, I'd have to extend the first bit, move the back bit, cut out a little bit. And ultimately, I got to the point, in the wake of our episode, David, of going, you know what, I'm over this. I'm paying a couple $100 a year, admittedly not sheep stations, but it's just not delivering. I went through one of our episodes and I went, no. It was missing. And so I asked for a refund, and thankfully they gave it to me. But I just said, they said, why are you leaving? And I said, well, you've got what you promise up here, but what's being delivered is nothing like that. Oh, okay, on you go. I think more of us need to be like Ulysses and be able to listen to this and not give in to the siren call of the overpromising. What's your take, David?
It's definitely a case of decide where you want the ship to go and make sure the ship is going to stay on course. Even if you want to, like Ulysses, listen to the sirens, you don't want them to take you off course. So AI should always be thought about in terms of, am I looking at this because it's novel and I'm not going to waste much time and resources? Or do I have a task in mind that I want it to do well and test it against that task? But stay on course with or without it, because it's just the current version of going down a digital rabbit hole.
I think we'll leave that story right down in that rabbit hole where it belongs. As long as we don't thump ourselves into frustration, we can crawl out somewhere else.
Avoid the myxomatosis.
And the ferrets.
Ooh.
Our 4 Ps. Number 4. Perspicacity. The one duty we owe to history is to rewrite it. Oscar Wilde.
David, I've got a personal question to ask you, if you don't mind.
Here we go again, listener.
Have you ever opened the lid of a jar of peanut butter and stuck your finger in and just had a fingerful of peanut paste?
No, I had a Hungarian grandmother who always seemed to be wherever she wasn't meant to be. And if I had ever done that, I think I would have got whacked in the back of the head with a wooden spoon. But what I learnt really quickly is if I went and got a teaspoon, I could gobble just about anything in the kitchen I wanted and never get in trouble.
Yes, well, I do admit that I have in my past had a phase where I used to gobble a couple of teaspoons of peanut butter, especially there's a particular brand, I can't remember what it is now, where there's just no oil, no sugar. It really is 100% peanuts just crushed into a beautiful paste. And it's just a joyful little mouthful.
Mm.
The reason it's top of mind, David, is ahead of the SA Variety Bash where we're going out camping, I was doing research on camping sites about what are some high-calorie foods you can have as an emergency backstop, because I had no idea how much they fed us. They feed us a lot on those things. And peanut butter was one thing that was referenced. I didn't do it in the end because I thought, no, then you need a jar. I didn't do it. However, it did mean that when this ad popped up, a Kraft peanut butter ad from 1991 with a Texan model. What's that? Stop motion. It's a stop motion Texan model made of peanut butter from a really oily jar. Pops up when the young child reaches into the pantry to get the Kraft peanut butter. Here's what happens.
Hold your horses, honey. How about some of this oily stuff? I've got gallons of it. Black gold, Texas tea.
No, thanks. I like Kraft peanut butter. It's so easy to spread, and it's never dry or oily.
But all this could be yours! Stop! Now, kid! Don't be rash, kid! No! Oh, my God!
Kraft peanut butter. Smooth or crunchy, but never dry or oily.
David, have you ever heard of the word nuance?
Yes.
It does not exist in that ad.
No, that ad takes a half-decent idea and breaks it.
Because you can think, oh, okay, some peanut paste is really oily. Oil. Texas. Oh, Texan, like a Texan cowboy. But yeah, we could have an oily, and it's just
just very weird.
I mean, the young girl in that ad, she's cute, that's gorgeous, but it's artless.
Yeah.
There's no, dare I say it, there's no craft in this ad other than a very blatant colour by numbers approach to an idea.
Yeah, the wonders of claymation, I guess they are desperately hoping you're impressed by that. Whereas it seems to me that just the little girl going into the pantry going, smooth, crunchy, smooth, crunchy, both. That ad would have been great.
Yeah, and I just find it's a lazy application of the idea.
Well, it's technology rather than engage the human.
Yeah, but even the script is just banging over your head over and over again. So in this Perspicacity segment, we look at old ads and we think, would they work and still hold up today? I mean, I sadly think it actually... I don't think we'll be overly successful because I think we've grown up a little bit beyond that. We have higher expectations, but there'd be a segment of the market where it'd be done with AI instead of real claymation.
Yep.
But just the analog to this is Channel 7, I think it was Channel 7 News, had a story in the week of recording about a Roomba, those little robotic vacuum cleaners in Queensland that had somehow got out of the person's house, and their household security camera saw it leave the driveway and go across the road where it got run over. But the newsreader, newsreaders are the most cringy, awkward humans. They don't know how to relate to humans. They have scripted anecdotes that try to sound like they're spontaneous. It's the most awkward thing to do, to watch them, because they go, oh, this is going to be a funny story. Switch into funny story mode. And they had this intro for this, which again is lazy thinking. That's where it's connected here. It said, if you're worried that robots might one day be our overlords, think again. This Roomba left a house and went onto the road where it got run over. Now, it's not even funny. It's the lamest setup because there is actually some degree of reality to thinking about robots taking over or AI, artificial intelligence, getting the upper hand in some way. But it's not going to be in the guise of a robot. It's like this. It's as lazy as those people who go, oh, it's 15 degrees, it's chilly today, and they say global warming, completely conflating the wrong ideas together. And that, David, is very similar to, I think, the lack of depth and thought in the way that this Kraft peanut butter ad was made. I mean, for crying out loud, they could have just said, if you think your day sucks today, think about being this Roomba. That
end of story.
Boom. So anyway, Kraft peanut butter, that ad, David, what's your verdict? Does it have legs for 2020s?
I think, sadly, it would work today because someone would be impressed by the CGI the same way we were meant to be impressed by the claymation. I think it's one of these things where a proportion of the room is going to go, oh, that's technically clever. Oh, it's sort of entertaining. Oh, yeah, it's peanut butter. The peanut butter is the third thing in line, but I think this never mind the message, what was the medium, does get in the way very often.
One last footnote. This was 91. We knew oil, Texas. Is that connection still strong for most people?
I don't know. If anything, people who are worried about fracking are going to sort of not see it as funny. They're going to see it as destructive. So, yeah, it was strange then. It's strange now.
Do you know what they should do if they're going to do it today? Is at the end they say, Kraft peanut butter. Fracking good peanut butter.
Frack on, mate. Yeah.
Okay. I think we better put this away.
Like the peanut butter with too much oil.
Back down that rabbit hole.
Thank you for listening to Talking About Marketing. If you enjoyed it, please leave a rating or a review in your favourite podcast app. And if you found it helpful, please share it with others. Steve and David always welcome your comments and questions, so send them to podcast@talkedaboutmarketing.com. And finally, the last word to Oscar Wilde. There's only one thing worse than being talked about, and that's not being talked about.